I never thought that one day I would find myself caught between betrayal and sibling loyalty. The day my sister's boyfriend confessed his feelings for me changed everything. He said he had loved me for a long time and couldn't stop thinking about me, but I never imagined that those words would plunge me into a spiral of pain and misunderstanding. So, what will happen next? Will my sister believe me? How will the family react? Since my sister Sarah started dating Alex, I've always been happy for her because she finally found the right guy. I've known Alex since we were kids because Sarah had a huge crush on him back then. When she told me they were dating, I was genuinely happy for her, thinking he was a good match for her. Since our family lives close and Sarah still lives at home with our parents, Alex often comes over to visit her. Every time he came, I always felt awkward, unsure of how to act around him. The first time I met him, I tried to keep my distance, polite but not overly friendly. It was just a simple meeting, and I didn't think much about him. But later, Sarah told me that Alex thought I was a bit cold and not very friendly, so she asked me to try being nicer to him. Even though I didn't feel anything romantic, I still tried to get along with him for Sarah's sake. Every time Alex came over, I would greet him and talk about things we had in common, like anime, which both of us loved. We had a lot of conversations, but to me, Alex was just Sarah's boyfriend, and I didn't feel anything beyond that. I tried not to let my sister's relationship affect my feelings, but it was hard not to feel uncomfortable at times. One evening, during a family Halloween party, things started to change. Sarah and Alex came together, and I was enjoying chatting with my friends. After a while, Alex approached me and asked if I could help him get a few drinks from the fridge in the garage. I agreed without thinking, assuming it was just a simple request. While we were walking to the garage, we started talking about our costumes, which were both from the same anime we loved. The conversation was light and fun, but as we were about to go back inside, Alex suddenly grabbed my hand and said he had something to confess. He admitted that he had feelings for me for a long time, and although at first he hoped those feelings would fade over time, he found that each day he came to our house, he felt more drawn to me. He said he couldn't stop thinking about me. I just stood there, speechless, not sure how to react. While I was trying to process what was happening, I couldn't help but think about Sarah, so I asked him what he felt about her. He replied that, although he loved Sarah, his feelings for me were stronger, and he even admitted that he loved me more than he loved her. He apologized for having these feelings, but said they were too strong to ignore. I was frozen, feeling like the world was spinning. Before I could respond, he waited for me to say something, but I could only stay silent. At that moment, I didn't know what to do, but I knew I had to tell Sarah about what happened. Alex's feelings couldn't just be ignored, and I couldn't let this go on without clearing things up. I rejected him and decided to find Sarah to tell her everything. When I ran inside, my heart was racing, feeling like the world around me had suddenly collapsed. Although I still didn't fully understand what was going on, I knew I had to find Sarah immediately to tell her what Alex had just confessed to me. But I didn't expect everything to spiral out of control like this. I ran upstairs searching for her, finally finding Sarah talking to some friends in the living room. I pulled her aside into a quiet corner where no one could hear. When I told her what had happened in the garage, she stood silently looking at me with a confused expression. I could see her face slowly tense up, and I felt a wave of fear rising within me. She didn't say anything right away, but just stood there as if trying to process the information. After a few seconds, Sarah suddenly walked out without looking at me or saying a word. I was lost, not understanding why she was reacting this way, but I felt an overwhelming sense of anxiety. I followed her, wanting to explain myself, but when I got to the living room, I saw her pulling Alex's hand and leading him upstairs. I stood there feeling abandoned with my chaotic thoughts. Would Sarah believe me? What would she do when she heard what Alex had said? I tried to focus on the party, but I couldn't shake the growing sense of dread. Every time I looked up, Sarah and Alex were still upstairs, showing no signs of coming down. A heavy feeling started to take over me. As time passed, the party began to wind down, but I still hadn't seen Sarah or Alex. A sense of unease settled over me. and I couldn't stand just waiting around. I decided to find Mom because I couldn't keep worrying without doing something. Both of us went upstairs, and I silently hoped everything would be okay. But when we reached Sarah's door, I felt my heart drop. The door opened, and I saw Sarah and Alex lying together on her bed. As soon as Sarah saw me, her eyes were cold and filled with disappointment. My heart shattered as she said, "Get out." I froze, not understanding what I had done wrong. I asked her why, but she only responded with one sentence. "You've always been jealous of my relationship with Alex. You've always tried to take everything from me." She turned away, pulling Alex with her out of the room, leaving me stunned and unable to comprehend what had just happened. It felt like I was being pushed into a corner by my own family, accused of something I hadn't done, without a chance to explain myself. Mom stood outside, looking at me with a disapproving expression. She started talking to Sarah, and I was left standing there not knowing what to do next. Sarah came downstairs with Alex, and as they walked out together, I heard her say, "You've done enough. You're no longer my sister." I was frozen, unable to believe that she would say something like that. No one in the family believed me anymore, and all I could do was stand there, crying in silence, feeling betrayed by the person I loved the most. Everything got worse the next morning. After that night, I could hardly sleep. And no matter how hard I tried to push away all the negative thoughts, I couldn't stop feeling betrayed. Sarah and Alex hadn't contacted me at all, and Mom always looked at me with a cold stare as if I was the one who did something wrong. Every time I tried to explain myself, Mom shut me down. The whole family had turned their backs on me, and I felt completely alone. At breakfast, I saw Sarah sitting at the table, but she wouldn't look at me. She was just focused on her phone as if I didn't even exist. I tried to start a conversation, but as soon as I spoke, Mom interrupted. "The whole family has made a decision," Mom said, her voice full of disappointment. "Your sister doesn't want to talk to you anymore, and there's nothing we can do to change her mind." I felt another shock when I heard this from Mom. No one in the family believed me. I tried to hold back my tears, but I couldn't. It felt like everything was falling apart. What did I do wrong? Just because of something that wasn't even my fault, I was being crushed like this. I looked at Sarah, hoping for some sign of sympathy, but instead she stayed silent, showing no reaction. It seemed like she had decided I was the betrayer, the one who always wanted to take everything from her. After breakfast, I decided I couldn't take it anymore. I had to face Sarah once more. No matter what, I needed to explain. I couldn't live in this silence. I found Sarah in her room, sitting on the bed with her laptop. I walked in, my heart full of determination, but when I spoke, "Sis, I need you to listen to me one more time," Sarah looked up at me, but her eyes were cold, emotionless. "I don't want to hear anything from you anymore," she said, her voice low and challenging. "You've taken things too far. You don't deserve my trust." Those words hit me like a knife to the heart. There was no chance now to explain or ease the situation. All my efforts seemed to be in vain. I couldn't hold back anymore, and tears began to fall. "You don't understand," I sobbed. "I never wanted to hurt you. I just can't ignore what happened. I need you to understand I didn't lie." But Sarah just looked at me coldly, with no sympathy or comforting words. I turned and walked out of the room, feeling like I had lost an important part of my life. Last night, I had hoped I could mend things, but now all that hope seemed to have faded. Walking in silence, I felt like I had been pushed out of my own family, and in my heart, I wondered if I would ever be able to regain Sarah's trust. The next day, things still didn't get any better. I didn't hear from Sarah or Mom, and I began to feel like I was really being pushed out of their lives. Each passing day, the feeling of loneliness and misunderstanding grew heavier. I stayed in my room, too afraid to go out because I dreaded facing the cold stares of my family. One afternoon, while sitting in my room, my phone suddenly rang. I quickly looked at the screen and saw a message from Alex. My whole body stiffened. After everything that had happened, I couldn't believe he had the nerve to reach out to me. My heart pounded as I opened the message. "I'm sorry for everything," it began. "I know I've caused a lot of pain for both of you, but I just can't stop feeling the way I do. I don't know what to do." His message left me confused and unsettled. I didn't want to hear any more apologies from him, but I felt this strange compulsion to know what else he had to say. I replied briefly, "Why did you do this? You knew I didn't want this." A few minutes later, he responded, "I'm sorry, but I can't stop thinking about you." Reading those messages again made me feel awful. I shouldn't have responded to him, but I was too weak to stop myself. I couldn't understand why he was messing with my mind like this. Inside, I still had so many unanswered questions. Was he truly in love with me, or was he just deceiving himself? I decided I had to talk to Sarah directly to clear this up. I couldn't keep living in this lie and unfairness. Even though I was hurt by how she reacted to me, I still needed her to understand what I had been going through. That evening, I found a way to meet Sarah in the living room when the rest of the family wasn't around. I didn't want to bother Mom or anyone else anymore. I just needed my sister to hear me out. I walked into the room and gently said, "Sarah, I want us to talk one more time. Can you listen to me without being mad?" Sarah looked at me for a moment, her eyes still cold, but I could see something different in them now. She sighed and then said, "Do you really think this can be fixed? You want me to trust you, but all you've done is ruin my relationship." Her words felt like a slap in the face, but I remained firm. "I never wanted to ruin you, Sarah. I just wanted the truth to be known." He admitted to me feelings he shouldn't have had. I couldn't keep that secret anymore. She was silent, as if contemplating what I had said. Time seemed to freeze in that moment, and I could feel the mix of emotions inside her. Would she understand me, or would I lose her forever? Sarah was silent, her eyes never leaving me, and I could feel every tense second hanging in the air. At that moment, I didn't know if she would understand what I had been through, but I couldn't give up. I needed her to know that I wasn't the one responsible for everything that happened. After a long pause, Sarah spoke, her voice low and slow. "Do you think it's easy for me to believe you? You've said these things before. You've always tried to take everything from me, whether it was toys when we were kids or now it's my boyfriend." Her words cut deep, but I couldn't let them push me back. "Sarah, I never wanted to hurt you. I just wanted the truth to be known. He's the one who admitted to feelings he shouldn't have, not me." Sarah stood up from the chair, turning her back to me as if she didn't want to hear anymore. I could see her shoulders tremble slightly, probably from the weight of the emotions she was holding in. "You don't understand," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I love him, and now you're making me question everything. Do you know what that feels like?" My heart ached seeing the pain in her eyes, but I knew I had to stay firm. "I didn't do anything wrong. If he truly loved you, he wouldn't do this. You need to face the truth, Sarah. I can't live with this lie." Sarah turned back to face me, her eyes wet, and a tear fell down her cheek. "You don't get it? You don't know what we've been through to make this relationship work," she said, choking back a sob. "Why do you want to ruin everything?" I felt my heart break. I don't want to ruin anything. I just want the truth to be known. I can't keep this secret when everything is becoming clear. A heavy silence fell between us. Every word I spoke seemed to touch her pain, but I couldn't stop. We both stood there, silent, like strangers. I felt like I was standing on the sidelines of my own life, watching the most precious relationship I had slowly crumble. Finally, Sarah turned back to me, and her eyes softened just a little. "Do you know how hard this is?" she asked, her voice weaker now. "I love him, but I love you too. You're my sister, and nothing will ever change that." At that moment, I felt a glimmer of hope, though I knew things were still far from over. But at least I knew I had done my best to speak the truth, to make sure there were no more lies between us. We were still sisters, despite all the challenges, and I knew there would be tough days ahead, but at least now I could be at peace, knowing that silence and deceit would no longer control my life.